All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone who has joined us from different locations. Welcome to the webinar. My name is Tanmay and I'm part of the developer community team. During the webinar today, witness some of the new and never before seen breakthrough features on the roadmap around low-code development, business process workflow, DevOps, and new modern web and digital experiences. Here directly from our product leaders, Faizan and Suhas, who would be talking today about some of the exciting new capabilities that will be released very soon. Before we start the presentation, make sure you post your questions in the Q&A panel. We have experts monitoring the panel, so make sure you do it in the Q&A panel. And we are also recording the webinar, so it'll be also be posted on Basecamp as a resource. So later you can share it with your friends, peers. Make sure that you also participate in the poll. We will run the poll during the session. Make sure to participate, cast your votes to make it more fun. So let's start the presentation. Over to you, Faizan.
Sure, thanks, Tanmay. Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to everyone joining us today. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through a quick presentation of the Kony Quantum vision and roadmap. So before I begin, I just wanted to outline that this is our general product direction, and this is for informational purposes only, and it is subject to change. Moving ahead, I'll directly jump into what we call our Kony Quantum themes, right? So when we work with innovation and adding investments to Kony Quantum or to the product, we work with some key themes that drive our product investments and innovations, right? So today we will be reviewing each of these investment areas in more details. So for our upcoming release and the upcoming release, we are internally calling it V9. It's going to be a major release and it's planned for early next year. We're working on 4 key areas, right? So the first key area is modern web and digital experiences. So what we plan to do over here is to continue enhancing our modern consumer journey through low-code end-to-end digital experiences, and especially on the web, right? Providing them more modern web capabilities. This would include things like enhancements to our existing PWA capabilities, or enhancements to the performance of web applications that we support today, and several other things that we'll see later in the session. The second area of investment is the enterprise DevOps and continuous testing. So what we have been doing is working on integrating a low-code continuous testing framework within Kony Quantum, and this testing framework helps you, with your DevOps pipeline as well, right? So we'll see today how you can, add functional testing within your applications, and how you can use this to continuously test on the cloud as well. And then we'll also spend a lot of time today talking about new low-code design and development experiences that we have added as part of Kony Quantum. We are reimagining how low-code development within Kony Quantum would look like, right? So this would include a lot of new things that you haven't seen before, including the features of having workflows built in within your applications, having the capabilities to dynamically generate CRUD-based forms from a database or a data model, being able to import paper-based processes like from Excel sheets or from CSVs and things like that to design that data model and then generate the front-end CRUD-based forms from it and all that. So all of this is going to be powered by the use of AI and machine learning through what we call Kony IQ, and this enables smarter and assisted development within your applications. So these are the key themes that we will be working with today, and we will be diving deeper into each of these areas. So the first one is modern web and digital experience. So what we've been doing with the past few releases is something that you might have noticed is we've been working on improving our progressive web application capabilities. We released progressive web apps. It's been more than a year now. I would say about a couple of years we've added this capability. So for the folks in this on the session today who haven't seen this yet or who are hearing this for the first time, progressive web apps are, modern web applications that combine the features of a traditional web app with the performance and experience of native applications, right? So that's how I would define a progressive web app. Now, when I say to combine the power of native and the flexibility of web, what that means is the native applications, like as you may know, have a lot of functionalities like offline capability, push notification, and then the full screen experience of a native app, apart from, that high performance and the ability to install the native app and have it available on your home screen, right? So all of those capabilities of native and the flexibility that the web applications, display, like things like being able to search the web application on a search engine, being able to share content much more easily through the web, being able to, update the application immediately without having to redeploy and resubmit the application all the way to the App Store, right? So all of those features of, the power of native, the flexibility of web, all of those combined together and, provide that with the combined capability within a progressive web app. Right, so we already have this capability today within our platform. We have had this in V8. So what we see here is Kony Visualizer. We have the capabilities to design a fully responsive web application. So what over here you see the progressive web app canvas, where you can define the different breakpoints for mobile, for tablet, and for a desktop based form factor. Apart from these, what you see over here is that we are using a lot of components to define how our applications work, right? So these components are not only used on the web, but they are also used on the native applications, right? So they're reused across, all the different channels and different devices, right? So we are using this component-based architecture. Now, once we do that, once we design the application using responsive web layouts, the next thing you would do is you would integrate it with your data, right? So on the left side, you may have, if you're using Visualizer version 8, the recent versions of Visualizer, you may have noticed that we have a data panel included, which allows you to add new data connections or, integrate with different sets of data, which integrate with your existing backend services, or you can, create new databases that you can integrate as well, right? So all of that data can be then mapped to the UI on the front end using what we call the mapping editor on our action sequences, right? So once you do that, so you have your design and you have your integration ready, the only thing that's left to do is, check the box for the progressive web app and start trying and, trying this out locally and testing your application locally. So for that, what we have provided recently is the capability to preview your apps locally using our Visualizer local app viewer. Within the local app viewer, what you can do is you can also debug your applications. So we can go in, we have a simple debug option there, debug your web application within Visualizer without having to deploy this. Now, once you're ready, you can buy a simple, button for build and publish web. You click on that, set your environment, which could be development, testing, or production. Once you do that, you build and publish your application. Once the publish is done, you get a URL within your console as well as an email sent to the user, and you can launch this on any of your web browsers. And your app is ready to share. The web app is ready to share with any of your customers or any of your external users. And this app is, of course, as we have talked about, it will be fully responsive, and it is a progressive web app. So another thing that we have seen is all the progressive web apps that are generated from Kony, they we ensured that we add the capabilities to these web apps so that they are they are 100% compatible with all the evaluations that like Google Lighthouse does for progressive web apps, right? So they're fully compatible and fully validated with Google Lighthouse as well. So these are the capabilities that you have already, seen over the last few releases, right? Last 2 or 3 releases, probably a bit more than that, going all the way to V8. We had added all of those capabilities. Now, what we are doing is we are continuing our support on progressive web apps. We are investing more on progressive web apps going forward. What that means is we are adding some of the features that we are adding in this area includes the ability to customize your service workers, right? So if you have used progressive web apps within Kony, you may have noticed that you have the simple configuration for generating a PWA today, right? So you just click on a checkbox that generates a PWA application for you. Now we have added another aspect of customization or configurability to it, where if you need to, you can also either write an extension to the service worker Kony generates, or you can create your own service worker from scratch. If you already have a service worker in your existing application, you can bring that in and replace it with the service worker that Kony generates, right? So those kinds of capabilities are something that we are working on. Apart from that, you may have noticed on the screens I showed previously, or the videos, the demos I showed, that there are a bunch of new, low-code templates and low-code components that we have bundled within Visualizer. So we have been working on these low-code components which integrate with, different external third-party libraries like Vue.js, Chartist, and stuff like that, and we are bundling them within Visualizer as well as making them available through the Kony marketplace as well. Apart from all of those, 2 key features that we are working for, which I would call out, are the consumer-grade performance and security, right? So when I mean consumer-grade performance, what we have been doing is we've been, making updates to our underlying web architecture, and we have fundamentally changed the architecture to improve the overall performance of our web applications, right? So this is not only for the application launch, but also includes all the UI rendering of the apps and stuff like that, right? So you will one of the things that you'll definitely notice with our upcoming release is the enhanced performance of the apps. And the second thing I was talking about is the consumer grade security, right? So what we are working on is a new, protected mode or security mode for web applications as well, similar to the protected mode that we have today for our native applications. So what that involves is it provides you different levels of security that you can add to your PWAs or your web application, right? So that will include obfuscation of the web application as well as encryption of the web application itself. So totally enhanced performance and consumer grade security. That's what's coming up in our next couple of releases of Kony Quantum. So moving ahead, this is all about modern web and digital experiences, right? So now let's move to enterprise DevOps and continuous testing, right? So I'll start with this, right? So finding a bug is like finding a playing card among a group of other playing cards. If we have just a few playing cards, it's much easier to find a specific card. Now, thinking about finding a card first time when you have 12 cards of the same suite, right? What about a whole deck? Can you find a specific card among 2 decks? The more cards I add, the harder it gets to find the card. The same thing happens when we test. If we look for defects, starting at requirements and design and constantly look for bugs as we build our app, it makes them easier to find than waiting until the end of a testing cycle to find our bugs. Now, this chart is from a study on understanding the cost of finding defects. Looking at this chart, it's easy to see that earlier we engage testing, the lower the cost. A lot of this is due to the fact that we need to shift testing left and make it easy and automated as possible along that way. This reduces the bugs found later in the development cycle and allows teams to focus on code quality from day one, right? So developers and development teams are looking beyond delivery velocity now, right? So teams embracing agile development are moving from a focus on delivering features to delivering quality features, right? So the shift has been on the left, right? So what we see over here is the entire life cycle of product development from design to build to test and deploy. We're shifting all the testing to the left, right? So we changed our ownership from owning a particular task to owning a project, from conception to production, right? So for all the members of a project, the objective is the same: get a stable product to production quality, right? So to production quickly, with a better quality. So all of this is represented in the simple slide. The top represents the length of time people normally commit to building a project that, typically once a week. When people start doing agile development, building becomes more frequent, but it's likely to, it's likely to have dedicated resources to do more builds. Now, build automation makes building easier and therefore more frequent, providing the benefits of finding bugs faster, easily rolling back changes, and creating a repeatable process for building apps. Now, thinking beyond the build, the more we test during the build, the faster we find bugs and remove them. So what we're doing is, this is our goal in the Quantum roadmap, right? So we are engaging testing early, right? We are making it easy and making it continuous. So what we are building is we're building testing directly within Visualizer to allow developers and testers to quickly create and record unit tests and functional tests, and automate these tests as part of the continuous testing lifecycle through our Kony DevOps platform. So what developers are doing are they're creating more tests, right? So in Agile DevOps world, they're some of the first gatekeepers to building a quality app. And they're becoming more and more active in the testing process, from creating a unit test to creating and updating tests. Again, the ownership here, is getting blurred. They're mutual and shared with, one thing in mind, like quickly getting a quality app into production, right? So that's what's in the mind. So what Kony's test recorder does is just that. It leverages a low-code recorder for the for the simple developer, or for the developer who is an early stage developer, but it also allows the experienced developers or testers to create more elaborate tests using a familiar JavaScript-based framework, Jasmine, right? So we are using Jasmine over here, which simplifies, testing across different levels of developers and testers that would use Kony Quantum. So with that, let's look at a quick demo of how this looks like, right? So how does it look like within Visualizer? So on the left, I have Visualizer. On the right, I have a web application, a web browser where I'll be running a web application. So we'll start with the web. So what I'll do is, first I'll go ahead and I'll deploy my web application on my browser. So I have an employee directory app running on my browser right now. So this application is built, and what I'll do is I'll go ahead and add some test. I'll do some test recording for this particular application. I'll go ahead and launch the test recorder, and within the test recorder, you'll notice I have an option to record the test and play back a test. So I'll go ahead and say record, and as soon as I go in and refresh my browser window, it starts recording the tests. I can now go into my browser window and perform all my operations or tasks within the application that I would want to be recorded within the test recorder window. So as and when I am performing these different operations within my web application, each of these steps gets recorded within the test recorder, as you can see on the screen, right? So once I, finish the recording of my test, I can always go back to the test recorder, and I can add a few actions within my recorded test script, right? I can add things at the beginning where I can add code snippets, or I can add wait times. I can add things between each of these steps that I have recorded, or I can add actions after by selecting each of these individual steps as well. So in this particular case, I'm adding an assertion over here to check if a specific text box is visible or not. And then I can, in this specific case, I'm adding some weight. So I'm adding a weight for a specific widget to show up before, the test recorder goes in and evaluates or validates that, right? So once I do that, I can, go in and go ahead and save my test case. So one of the things that you will see over here is not only the graphical view of the test cases, the steps of the script that gets recorded, but also the, the generated testing code on the right as well, right? So I go ahead and save this, and then I say play. Once I say play, go back and refresh my browser to enable it to to be connected to it and play. So once I start playing, you see the test script automatically running and playing itself. Once it does that, this will be the result within the console. And in this particular case, of course, the results have failed because the assertion that I've added was to look for the visibility of a text box which is present there. So I'll go back and change the assertion. I'll say that, okay, the text box should be there instead of not be there. And once I do that, I go back and play my test case again. And of course, what's going to happen is that the test case will pass. Now, once you do this local testing within Visualizer, we also allow you, you to look at the test results within Visualizer as well, right? So once you save this and launch this, what's going to happen is you'll have your Visualizer test results coming in, which you can open in a browser window, and it tells you, how many test cases have passed and how many test cases have failed, right? So all of these capabilities are built into your local testing within Visualizer. Now, one of the things we notice is that the test cases are building blocks, right? So once you record a test, it needs to be reusable by other test scenarios. So Kony's testing framework allows you to build atomic test cases that can be reused as part of larger scenarios as well. So thinking about every test case that a user logs into an app, does some actions, and logs out. If we can capture the login and log out test cases as individual elements, we can reuse these two test cases every time we create a larger test scenario. If the login changes, I just need to change the login test case to have the changes reflected across my higher level test scenarios. So let's take a look at how we can do this with Kony Visualizer as well, right? So how do we create these test scenarios and how do we create these test runs? So again, here is another demo which kind of walks you through how we can create test suites with the test scripts or the test cases that we have recorded. So on Visualizer on the left, within the the Project Explorer, you see the option to create test suites, right? So I click on that, and what it does is it gives me the available test cases that I have recorded, and I can select the test cases that I want to combine to create my test suite, right? Once I do that, I can also go ahead and create a test runner, which would be a combination of a test suite as well as a test case as well, right? So all of these can be combined, and then I can have my test suite and my test runners created. So this allows you to either share your test suite across the different functionalities of your application, and then create a test runner, for different different areas or different environments that you would want to validate your application with. So another feature that we have is the testing dashboard within Visualizer as well. So once you run all your tests, they are stored. The last 5, history of your tests are stored locally, and your results are available to validate or to view whenever you would want to from the testing dashboards. Now, once you do, so that's how you would do that on the web, right? So if you go to native, it's a very similar experience, right? So here, instead of connecting to a web browser, you would connect to your app viewer, or you would connect to an app running on your device, right? So once you connect your app running on the device to your local machine where you're running Visualizer, you would start recording your test cases similarly to the way that you were recording your test cases within the web browser as well, right? So I go in and then I start recording my test cases. This automatically starts, creating each of my test, generating my test script, right, with each of the steps. Again, the graphical view on the left, and then the Jasmine, the generated code as Jasmine on the right. So once I do that, once I record my test cases, you have the same kind of features for native as well, where you can add in, several actions through the different steps of my test case, throughout my test script. And once I do that, I can go ahead and play back the test case locally and view the results within the console, similar to how we did for the web application, right? So here, just a quick couple of examples of how I'm adding weight at different intervals. So this is like waiting. It could be waiting for a widget to show up. It could be scrolling to a widget. It could be, capturing a screenshot. So all of these actions are available within the test recorder itself. So I go ahead and then I play back my my test for this particular native app. And okay, let me go ahead and name this test and save it. And so all these kinds of validations, like being able to connect to your device, being able to name or rename your test case, are all within your test recorder window, are all included in your test recorder window. And then I go in and then quickly play back this test on my native device. Once I do that, of course, I get the test results within my recorder window as well. And all of these are, again, recorded as part of our dashboard that you've seen. So with that, I think I'll pass it to Suhas for continuation of this and how we test on the cloud, right? So how is this going to come all together and work with continuous testing on the cloud?
Thanks, Faizan. All right. So once we have the user has created the test cases, the user checks in the project to GitHub, and the user can, it can automatically schedule auto builds, or the user can log into the console and build manually, or they can also have nightly builds trigger in the App Factory. And they can choose using App Factory, which is our continuous CI/CD, to build and deploy. And you can choose what binary types, like web or iOS, Android native, to build for. And once the build is complete, the App Factory automatically emails the user about the build completion, and also it stores the data in the App Factory console for somebody to come and investigate at a point of time. And it also deploys the services to the backend, right? So in addition to this, if the developer so chooses, they can configure the build automation services, and using APM scripts and real devices on the AWS device farm, this can actually run a test suite. And once the testing is complete, it can again send an email to the users, as well as store the results for further viewing, right? So now let's look at a demo of how this actually looks. So this is the visualizer view where the user has created all the test cases. User is now checking in their code into the Git repository. And once they're checked in, they're going to the Cloud Console, and they're going to the App Factory, and opening App Factory, and they're scrolling to the specific project of choice. And here we see the configurations available. So you can choose to either build in debug mode, release mode. You can choose which channels to build for. In this particular test case, we're targeting desktop web, right? And you also have configurations, other configurations available, like choosing which web app version, whether you want to publish the Fabric app or not. And in this case, we also added a new functionality to run the test cases. So we have this run web of desktop web test. And once you've chosen the specific configuration, we do the deploy. So it runs the test case, builds it first, as you can see the progress. And once that is finished, it goes ahead and starts the tests. And once the testing has finished, it sends an email to the users with the information on what has passed and what has failed and stuff like that. There is also a link in the email to go and see the more detailed test report. And in the detailed test report, you can see more information like, if a test case failed, why it failed, the error message and stuff like that, so that you can go ahead and get more info on what happened and why it failed and so on, right? So this is about how we are integrating the test automation that we are creating from a visualizer with App Factory and ensuring you can have a continuous deployment and continuous testing kind of thing built in from Fabric, right? So, yeah, with that, back to you, Faizan.
Okay, so with that, I think we conclude two of the key themes that we have seen. And now let's move to the third one, right? So this is very interesting. So we have made a lot of enhancements in, the low-code design and development experience theme that we have. And this particular theme focuses on, rapid application development with workflows, right? So we have talked about workflows earlier as well at the beginning. And this particular theme is what focuses on those workflows. So one of the investment areas in this release is what you may know as an application workflow or as a business process, right? So you can start anywhere. A user can start with application development anywhere is something that we have seen, right? So it could be a persona of a business analyst that's starting working on an application, and he may think that the best way to start working is by creating a quick workflow or of the application by adding what screens the application needs versus the navigation between those screens, right? Or you may you may want to start with designing your workflow itself, right? So that's the workflow first approach. You may want to design your workflow first, or you already have data in the backend system, or you want to design the data first, like probably an order management application, and start with a data first approach. So there are different perspectives to how you see the application workflow or business process, right? So there's multiple ways of how you see this. Now, what we have done is if you're thinking about the business process management, what we're doing is not it's not this elephant, right? So we're not trying to do full business process management. It's too complex to set up and to configure, and it involves a lot of integration with many different tools and processes. When we talk about application workflow or adding more business process management capabilities within the platform, we're not talking about this elephant. What we are talking about is this, right? So we're talking about how you can have an end-to-end workflow within the application, right? So you have an end-to-end workflow on the client-side application, and that flows into your client-side business logic. That's the client-side workflow, and then that finally, when all of this is submitted or to the backend, all of that flows into what we call a server-side workflow. So these are the three areas that we'll be talking about today, right? So we will be focusing on these three areas. And these are the three areas that when we spoke to our customers that they were interested in when we talked about workflows, right? So they wanted, some of our customers thought that the front-end workflow is something where they could quickly see all the different, the UI forms within the application, right? So all the different forms that are available within their front-end application and how those, forms navigate to or between each other, right? So how they talk to each other, what's the navigation between each of the forms. That's one of the things that some of our customers thought was a workflow. Some of our other customers thought that, that is important, but I would want to be able to quickly put together the front end client side business logic, as a quick process, right? So adding validations, adding navigations, or adding some business logic within the front end and making these service calls, right? So that's what they consider a workflow. And then finally, once we submit kind of like an order in an order management app, right? So what the process that triggers after we do that submission, that is what some of our users were looking for and what we call the server-side workflow, right? So we are going to look at all of these three areas. So we'll start with what we call the storyboard view, right? So this is a view of your application on Visualizer on the front end, right? So this would show you all your forms within your project, right, for all the different channels. And what you can do is you can quickly put together all of a storyboard of what you would like to create or design, right? So if I'm starting as a new project, I would go in and I could quickly build a storyboard of what my application is going to look like using components, or I can generate that using data or services and quickly organize that as an application flow. And once I add those forms together or create those screens, what I can also do is quickly add some navigation logic between those forms, right? So let's look at a quick demo of how that looks. So one of the things that you're going to notice as soon as you launch the next edition of Visualizer is the startup flow of the application is changed as well. It's enhanced further. We start with different options for the user to choose between a web application versus native, and once you select a web application, we give a choice of selecting what kind of channel you would like to start with, whether it's a desktop versus a mobile channel, right? So in this particular case, the user started with a web application, and what you see over here is a storyboard view. We already start with the default, a default form in place. I go in and rename that form, and I can just drag and drop one of my components onto the form, and that generates the form template for me. In this particular case, the login. I can then click on new form, start adding more forms, and in this particular case, what I'm doing is I'm trying to generate my forms through the data, right? So I go in and I create a new data table, right? So once I create a data table with a set of different fields within the table, I can go in and just drag and drop this within my storyboard itself. What this generates is all the different CRUD forms for that particular data set, right? So it generates the list, the details, the creation of a record, and the edit of that record as well. And not only does it do that, it also adds the navigation between all those CRUD operations or the CRUD forms, right? So if you see the list is already navigating to the details allows you to edit that particular record, and then you also have an option to create a record as well. With a record capture as part of the create operation, right? So with a record capturing form. So all of these navigations are already present. Now once we do that, so any new application that you start with going forward, you can quickly set it out with using all of these the storyboard capabilities. Any existing applications that you have, we will automatically, so what Visualizer does is it automatically picks up all of these, forms within your applications, and if you already have navigations built in within that application through the action sequences, all of that are generated, and you see the storyboard already available to you for your existing applications. Now, once you have this application, the storyboard ready, one of the things you would want to do is add some front-end business logic to these particular form navigations. That's where the client-side workflow comes in. So what we did with our V9 release, our upcoming releases, we have added what we call enhancements to our existing action sequence, right? So if you have been using action sequences with Visualizer, you will notice that, we have upgraded or enhanced the action sequences to look more like workflows, right? So, and to give a much more simple event-driven flow to the users, or a much more visual flow to the users that you can, follow the application's business logic through that client-side workflow. And apart from that, we've also added and enhanced several different actions within these action sequences, right? So there's like many new actions and many new capabilities within this client-side workflow that we will be releasing along with this. So let's look at a quick demo of this as well. Right, so if I go in now, I want to add some navigation between my login form and my incident list form. So I go in and add that. Once I add that in, I can click on the icon in between, and that launches my client-side workflow, which shows my business logic on the client side. So I already have the business logic built up here, which is invoking an identity service. And on success and failure, I have different processes that are running through those callbacks, right? One is navigating to a form, and another one is showing an alert on failure. So for each of these actions within my workflow, I can go in and define different properties, right? So I can go in and set different properties, like invoking what kind of service, or if it's an alert, showing what the alert is, the message within the alert, and what type of alert it is, and all those kinds of things. On the left, you'll notice several different new actions that we have added as part of this client-side workflow enhancements. And what I can do is I can drag and drop some of these actions, and it the place where I drag that, it goes and stick to the closest node over there. I can then go in and add my update my properties for that specific action that I've dropped, which in this particular case is a conditional statement, right? So if I've added an if condition over here, what I'm going to do with this if condition is I'm just trying to check if the values that the user has entered into the text boxes for the login for the username and password are valid or not, right? So if they're not, so adding those kinds of validations within the workflow, right? So I'm adding this for both the username and the password fields. Once I add that, if the validation succeeds, I would go ahead and I would invoke the service. But if it does not, then I would show an alert message to my users, right? So that's where I'm adding alert message saying that, okay, if the validation does not succeed, then go and show an alert to this particular user, right? So again, in this particular case, we are providing the properties for that alert, where I provide the alert message, the alert type, and the different labels and icons present for the alert. So this is how you can define a front-end client-side workflow, right? Now the next thing that we have would be the server-side workflow, right? So with that, I think Suhas will walk us through all the demos and how we provide the capabilities of the server-side workflow in Quantum. Suhas?
Thanks, Fizan. All right. So from the server side, what we are building is BPMN 2.0, that is a business process management 2.0 compliant visual editor. It will follow similar paradigms as the client side so that the UI is not too different. This is being introduced as a new type of Kony Fabric backend service, and it leverages all the existing it integrates with the existing Fabric services, and it is also existing leveraging the server events bus. I'll talk more about the server events bus later in the presentation as well, to provide high performance and scalability and such. So again, just to re-emphasize, what we are building is a simplified low-code approach to server-side processes. We are not trying to do a business process which is managing the entire organization. So we are not trying to do what is here on the left. What we are trying to do is primarily a low-code business process for app workflow, right? In the context of one app, correct? So server-side workflow, we will support, workflow for a business process. We'll have support for features like, adding data validation rule when a particular thing is changing state. And you can have security policies like, only an admin can do certain things, only a customer can do certain things, only a manager can do certain things, and so on and so forth. It also has the ability to invoke services to update third-party systems or gather additional data, like if you want to get information from a third-party bureau or get information from a weather, decide whether your flight is going to get delayed, do any third-party invocation for data gathering or otherwise, or just informing them. All that is possible. You can also configure business logic to automatically advance the workflow based on some condition being met or not being met. Right? You can also send user notifications such as email. We'll start off with email. In future, we'll also support push and such. And you can also associate workflow with the Fabric object services so that you can have seamless integration with the business processes and with Kony applications. And it's not like an external trigger that you have to do. It is baked into the application. So when you use an object service that is integrated with the workflow, it automatically advances. So just to give a bit more idea on how this coupling between the object data model and the server-side backend workflow is done. So we are going to look at two examples of workflow. The first one, we'll take a very simple case of an incident management, right? And incident is the object at point here. So somebody creates an incident, and then it is assigned to a worker. Then the worker starts working on it, right? And then once they've finished working on it, it is completed. So there is a create incident, which is the create status, and then there is an assigned status, there is an in progress status, and then there is a completed status, right? So all of this we are having or tracking using a status field in that particular object, and we are linking the status field as a workflow status with the workflow itself, so that anytime this object is invoked and its status is being modified, it moves the workflow and triggers other things that are in the path of the workflow, right? We'll look into it in a bit more detail in this sample. So here we are going to the incident reporting service, and we are adding a couple of fields. And we also are adding a new field called as status. And this status will be a field of type workflow state. So this is a new data type, basically, so that we can link it with the workflow. And we are going to say, okay, configure a new workflow. We go and give a name to the flow, right? And you have a deployment compliant box here. So you can create, you start off with a start node. It has features like, left align, right align, snapping to grid and other stuff, so that because when you build complex workflows, you need the ability to, easily navigate this. So here we are putting a pool so that you can segregate user responsibilities. So we are calling the whole thing incident management, and we are segregating it by roles, like something is done by the end customer, something is done by an admin, and something is being done by the worker who's actually working on the incident. So this incident, just to give a bit more, context about the scenario, incident management is something like many airports and railway stations and stuff has. Somebody sees some issue like a security incident, or somebody has left a bag that is missing, or a restroom is not working fine, some tap is not working. You just want to raise an incident and ensure the people are looking into it, are working on it. So this is the simple kind of an incident management use case, right? So you have a customer who's actually creating it. There is an admin who's actually looking and assigning the task, and then you have a worker who's actually going and resolving the particular incident, right? So this swim lanes is basically only for visual distinction, right? So the user goes and first creates the incident, and he connects the start node to that. And each node has properties. We'll go into that in a bit more detail in the next demo of this. So you can have parallel or say, exclusive paths. So in this case, once an incident is created, we want to thank the user for creating the incidents because they've been basically notified that there is an issue. And at the same time, you also want to trigger another thing, which is basically you want the admin to go and assign the task to somebody. So you are putting a parallel node and doing two informations. One is actually sending the email, and the other is routing it to the admin for him to assign. And these are user-defined tasks. Basically, it is waiting for a user to do an action. This is an asynchronous process. The user, when they do that, it will progress. So this also gives you asynchronous capability, right? So you have a service task here, which is actually invoking an integration service. You can integrate with an integration object, identity, any kind of service. And you can configure input parameters for invoking that service. And the data for that can come from what is called as a workflow context, which maintains information like what was the previous calls response data. If you're calling the trigger from a client application, what data you passed, or if some data is present in the identity session, it can access that as well. So all this information is available for the workflow context to invoke services. So you just notified the worker, the admin just notified the worker that, there is something you have to go and look into that. Then the worker has the option of, going and accepting the incident, and then he starts actually working on it, right? And once he has done, you again send a mail saying, it is done. So you have an end notification as well. So this basically lets you create an entire flow and see who's doing what, segregate responsibilities, associate user tasks, associate service calls, and ensure you can visualize as well as track the workflow as when it happens. So now once he has created the workflow that is associated with that incident object, he saves it. We go back to the status field in the object service, and we see that it is saying incident flow. This is the workflow state with which it is saved. So now the object service and the workflow service are linked, right? So now let us look at another sample, right? So just to give some more context about this sample that we're using. So this is basically a loan approval process. Somebody comes to a bank and not necessarily a physical bank, they're doing it online. They're submitting some information and asking for a loan. You trigger various kind of, data gathering, like getting their SSN, and with that you go and get their credit history, their financial history, employment status, and all that kind of stuff. Then you do, a loan eligibility check, which can be done manually by a person, or you can also have a business logic if it is very simple enough. And based on that, it determines if the user is eligible or not eligible. If it is not eligible, it just says sorry and sends an email to them. If it is eligible, then it goes and does some more processing to calculate the interest rate and process the loan. And once that is done, it sends a loan email and saying it is approved, and then actually does the processes for disbursing the loan, right? And if there is some failure in between itself, like, the SSN that they supplied is wrong, then it is just going to fail then and there, saying incorrect user details, and end the flow then and there. So it's not like a workflow has one endpoint. Every flow has an end. If it goes through this flow, this is the end, this is the end, and so on. If everything was successful, this is the end. So this use case, we are going to walk through to show a bit more about the properties and what data context and all are there, and as well as when somebody is going from stage 1 to stage 2 and all that, how do you track it? How does an admin or somebody see the progress of the workflow? So that is another thing that we'll be looking at as part of this sample. So so we see the integration, service invocation. We have a device request, backend response, and identity, different context from which you can get the data. You have an SSN check for each part. So basically, you have a conditional forking of flow based on the condition that you put as part of the path itself. So here it says if it is eligible, go in this path. If it is not eligible, go in this path. And here we are showing the email template composition. So in case the the loan is in this case rejected, you still want to send an email from them from your bank address, and you want to put a subject and you want to substitute the user's first name and such thing, which you would have got from when he submitted the form. So you would have still persisted that information in the workflow context, and you'll be able to substitute that here, and then you'll be automatically sending that email. So actually, this functionality is available as part of an email adapter, and as well as being included as a node into workflow, so that you can invoke it as part of a workflow or independently. So yeah. So here it is specifying values to the output. So you can also modify values to the output, and this is a success email, which is similar to the failure email, just that the messaging is different, right? And then it goes and disperses the loan and end. So just for testing, here we are showing that we are invoking a service, which is the object service that is related, and making it submitted first. And once it is submitted, we go to the specific workflow instance and see that it goes through all the nodes that are shown here: submitted, getting customer SSN, getting the financial history, checking loan eligibility. And then it has stopped the user task. Now we make it saying eligible, and the same thing has proceeded, and it has calculated the interest rate, email has been sent for approval, and loan has been dispersed and ended. And we also see the email actually being delivered to the end customer in this case, right? So this is showing how you can use a workflow and how you can track its progress and all that stuff. Moving on, yeah. So as we said, this is in the context of an application. If you need, full BPM, if you have third-party full BPM that you're already using, this can integrate with that as well. So the whole low-code persona that we have been talking about, we have been trying to make things easier. We are supporting all three types of workflow, end-to-end, client and server-side, and you can configure workflows, and all this is tightly integrated into Visualizer and Fabric. And as we said, it has easy integration to full VPN platforms. So moving on, a couple of other things that we wanted to quickly highlight. We are also building what is called as a rules engine into Fabric as part of V9. And currently, Quantum already supports what is called as easy rules, which is an MVL-based rules format, which is used in pre and post processes. But we are trying to improve it and make it as a first-class service. So similar to workflow being upgraded to a first-class service along with integration, orchestration, and identity, rules also is going to get upgraded to a first-class service along with that. And we'll have a new tab for rule services where somebody can go and create a rule set. Rule set is basically related rules. Like if you want to do loan, educational loan, personal loan, vehicle loan, blah, blah, are all part of one rule set, so to speak. It's just a logical organization, right? And the rule itself will be like an operation within that. The rules can have defined inputs and outputs, and you can have rule logic. And more importantly, the rule logic is something that you can modify at runtime without having to redeploy the app. To give you an example, an app, there is a credit card type that a bank is deployed, and they want to change, they want to give a promotional offer, right? They want to reduce the rate or something, or throw in some freebies and all that stuff. They want to give lesser credit score also option to get that. So for example, those kind of business rules is not something you want the BA or the backend admin to be able to modify that, the backend office. You don't want to republish your Fabric app every time such a rule is being modified. So we're going to give an admin API so that you can go and modify this rule logic dynamically from the backend. For example, the 360 app, which is the backend app, can modify the rule of the retail banking app, which is the consumer-facing app, right? And we're also, initially it's going to be MVL-based scripting, and in future we'll also support table view as well as a UI rule builder to build this, right? Now let's look at a quick sample. So here, just to give an intro, this is again, something related to credit cards and loans. So we have various criteria like credit rating, credit length, and available credit. And you're taking these as inputs. And based on that, you're giving information like, okay, this is the criteria, then it is rejected. And then if they're falling under this bracket, then you are going for a manual review, right? And if it is in this, it is being approved. But when you are approving based on their credit score and other such, you are giving different rates of loans. Because if somebody is in the system for long, you want to give them a lesser loan rate. And if they're new, you are going to charge them higher, right? So it's just setting context for that. So once they have defined this rule using MVL script, they'll be able to test it just by invoking that like a regular service. So here we are just showing loan eligibility. They're passing in 3 parameters: credit rating, credit length, and available credit. And it responds back saying, the first case it said reject. We modify the values and test it, and it comes back with then for review. That means somebody has to manually review. And again, this rule can be combined with the workflow as well, so that you can put in more complex business rules as part of your workflow and still be able to modify that actual business logic at runtime, right? And also, this is another case where it has come back with approved, right? So this feature is available today, but it is hidden somewhere in the third level. It is in an advanced section as part of rules, where you can go and define the pre-processor rules. You can give a name, a description, and an actual condition. The MVL is designed to look like English and be easy to read and interpret, and easy to write as well, right? So we are planning on enhancing this and with the table view and other stuff as well after V9. So what we are planning is creating rules as a first class, as I said, and with the rule sets like the loan or mortgage, again, as I said, just grouping. And within each of that rule, you can invoke this as an API, just like you call the integration service. You'll have a URL. You'll be just able to hit it and get that data. In future, we'll also support adding custom logic, like if you want to invoke something from a JavaScript or a Java code for more complex business processing, that is also possible. You can have that custom business logic there. The inputs like credit rating, credit length are just passed like input parameters to regular service, and your loan approval status or this thing comes as an output. And this is the actual code in MVL, which will be visible, editable, and modifiable from the code section. And the approval, yeah, as I said, approval and interest rate are the output from this rule, which says whether it is approved or rejected, and if it is approved, what is the interest rate and such. So then you will be able to test this just like a regular service by pointing it to an environment. You'll also have a table view in future where you can specify just these numbers and not write a single line of code for your execution. Okay. So moving on, another topic that we want to introduce is server-side events. So the reason so server-side events is basically running on an event bus that we had created a while back, but we are using that event bus and ensuring that several systems can create as well as listen to events on the Fabric server. And you can use this for various kind of scenarios. I'll at least explain 3 scenarios as quickly as I can. You can use it as a callback mechanism for a server, for an invocation, as well as listening to anything which is area of interest, something that you are concerned with. So as I said, this is all built on top of the event bus and Fabric. And you have different types of service, right? Like integration, object, and workflow. Each of them can either fire or listen to events on the event bus, right? And we'll just see a quick video of how that is being done. So we are taking a scenario again of somebody doing a deposit or a withdraw, a transaction, and you want to, whenever a deposit or withdraw is done, you want to audit that data, and you don't want to go and make the end user or the client application call the audit service and all that. You just want to ensure that when a deposit or withdraw response, that is the server service response, you just want to invoke audit as a service. So basically, we are going to configure that and see how it is being done. So you have deposit, which is going to create a new event. we are having server-side events as a new thing. We are raising a new event saying transaction/deposit. That is the topic name, transaction/deposit. And then withdraw is similarly doing a transaction/withdraw. And audit is just subscribing to both of them. That is, it is listening to both of those events. It says withdraw as well as deposit. Now you may see here that you can raise an event on either an incoming request, that is when the service is being hit, or when the service is going out, that is on an outgoing response. And you can just listen to any specific event of interest. Here we have specifically called out transaction withdraw and transaction deposit for understanding, but it also supports, these are essentially topics. It also supports wildcard. So if you want to do just transaction/star, that is also supported, so that anything of interest you can listen to, right? So this is just the configuration part of it. So this, if you do without writing a single line of code, the transaction gets invoked when the thing is done. So yeah. So now that we have seen invoking this without writing any code, there is always case for somebody wanting to invoke an event from custom code that they've written either in a preprocessor or a post-processor or as a Java service, right? So custom code support is also available. You also have support for third-party systems. An LOB wants to invoke an event. We also expose a REST API so that you can invoke an event or fire an event from a third-party LOB onto Kony Fabric as well. So let us see how that is done. So in the custom code, you just have an interface, get service manager, get event notifier. So you can just use this line of code, single line of code to listen, as well as you can subscribe to it using, you can show your topics of choice, withdraw and subscribe and deposit in this case, and you can just listen to that as well. So this shows that you can do it from custom code as well. Now moving on, the next part is we saw that you can invoke from an LOB and all that, but the another most powerful thing is you want your client app to be able to invoke or subscribe or listen to fire or listen to events on the event bus. For example, and this is being done by a WebSocket which is being opened. So to just give context, you had a check being deposited. It's going to take some time. It's being done via a batch process. It's not going to immediately get deposited to your account. But once the deposit is actually done, the client can actually, once it fires the initial API call for check deposit, it can also register itself to listen to a check deposit successful event, so to speak, on the server, right? And once that is actually done, whether it is done in 5 minutes or 15 minutes or whenever, that information is sent back to the client, and that gets notified just because the client was interested in it and it got notified. Or you can also do a long-running process if there is just a bad job and it is not something you want to wait on. You can use it as a callback mechanism as well, right? From the client app via WebSocket, you can listen to the server-side events and get that. So this is another code snippet for showing it from the client app. So we have built a client app which is going to subscribe and unsubscribe to the deposit withdrawal. In the background, you're seeing what is a server event monitoring, which is basically another event monitoring similar to the services and environment that we built, where you can see event count and if there is any error and how much time it took for delivering the message and stuff like that. This is more like an admin view to see that it is processing. So here, user is sending in an event and they get back a response after some time. This is, again, very simple line of code. You'll have an API exposed from Fabric, so exposed from client Fabric SDK, which just allows you to register or listen to events and stuff. And this is just showing the event monitoring with the the different events being invoked, who is invoking, what is the source, which app it is invoking, overall number of subscribers for it, number of events that was delivered for that, the time for delivering the event and such. Okay. And we also support integration with the third-party streaming systems for listening to events, that is like Kafka and such. You can read from Kafka and push to Kafka. I don't have time to show that, but that code also, we'll have a blog as part of the preview release itself, which is explaining how you can connect with Kafka or third-party systems for this. right? So just quickly going through, server-side events allows raising, creating or listening to events. It can be used as a pure callback as well as listening to events of interest. It works with WebSocket. It has REST API. It has UI to allow admin to monitor events being subscribed to and all that stuff. It allows raising events without having to write code. And it also allows integrating with third-party data systems like Kafka. All right. With that, we're going to the last topic, Kony IQ. Back to you, Faizan.
Okay, so with this, we move on to the fag end of our session over here. So what we are going to talk about is how all of these features within Kony Quantum, right? So how all of those are combined, and then how we provide Kony IQ with all of these features to to assist as an assistant, basically, to simplify and accelerate app development, right? So Kony IQ, the simple way to describe it is it's an AI-powered developer assistant to simplify and accelerate app development, right? So it includes a lot of AI and machine learning capability within itself. So Kony IQ provides an AI-assisted framework for delivering productivity features. It combines the Quantum AI dev kit and a chatbot framework to enhance developer productivity with things like feature discoverability and product enablement. Let me go ahead and play that. And then it also allows you to do things like background analysis and recommendations, automation of tedious and routine tasks, and validation of quality, performance, and best practices within your app, right? So some of you may have already noticed this within the latest versions of the V8 SP4 release. So we have done a silent beta release of this to our existing users as well. So what we the IQ capability is going to enhance based on the amount of usage of this particular feature in itself, right? So the more you use, the more the machine learning capabilities running behind the scenes, and the more the AI capabilities governing this chatbot framework that you see over here, right? So things like your day-to-day tasks, right? So how do I, what version I am in? Right, instead of trying to figure out or asking your developers to go in and try to find what specific version they are in, just ask IQ. It comes back with details on the specific version that you've been using, or things like changing the Android SDK. So how do I do that? So or these routine questions are something that IQ answers, right? Apart from these, it also helps you with some of your daily tasks, right? Being able to create new forms, being able to find new components and things like that. And then it also provides a lot of recommendations of what you can use while you are doing the development, right? So all of these are something that we've been working on, like finding the duplicates within a specific application, for example, right? So if you might have a lot of duplicate skins, a lot of duplicate widgets, a lot of duplicate components in itself, right? So this helps you to quickly find and validate, if you are using a same kind of or a similar kind of component across the application without reusing it, right? So there's like you have a component A, component B that they do the same kind of functionality. They provide the same functionality, but then they are used as two different components. So it kind of tries to provide those kinds of recommendations and tries to tell the user that it looks like you're using these same components which have the similar type of widget, similar type of layout, similar type of functionality, but you're not using components for it, right? You're using it's just the same kind of widget set, but not a component. Do you want me to create a component for you and help you out with reusing this? So these kinds of features are available within the Kony IQ as well. Apart from that, being able to, like I said, it helps you with product enablement and feature discoverability as well, right? So if you have questions about a specific feature, it goes and searches for answers for that within the Basecamp, within Marketplace, or within Visualizer Heights itself, right? So it's It's integrated with all these different, enablement aspects of Kony Quantum, like Basecamp, like Marketplace, and with the concept of hikes, and then, enhances and allows users to work with them. So here what you see is, all the things that, the Kony IQ can help you with, right? So things like language translation. So if you want to quickly translate your application, how would you do that? You can quickly ask Kony IQ to do that, and IQ would instantly manage translating your application to a different language, right? So a lot of different use cases that we have already worked on, and a lot of different use cases that are within our roadmap as well, right? So we have capabilities like being able to, a lot of productivity capabilities like build and run, spell check, marketplace and Basecamp search, hike search, and then a set of, a lot of FAQs that are built into this IQ engine, right? And then a lot of capabilities to accelerate tedious tasks like, language translation, removing unused assets, and then finally, being able to provide recommendations to the developer while they are developing the application, like, identifying opportunities for reusable components, recommending marketplace assets, and then identifying performance optimizations within your project. So all of these are something that are already available within IQ or will be available within V9, as well as we are continuously working on providing more features to it as part of our roadmap, like, adding features where, we can add Git-based collaboration, or we can add linting features with it, or adding, a best practices analyzer within Kony IQ that helps you analyze best practices within IQ itself. So all of that is coming together to improve and provide assistance to simplify and accelerate app development on Kony Quantum. So with that, I think it's a wrap up. I think we've already hit our time for today. So going back, and here's a quick summary of all the themes that we have been working on. Again, modern web and digital experiences, enhancing our PWA capabilities, enhancing our performance and security on the web, enterprise DevOps and continuous testing, adding the testing capability, the functional testing on Visualizer for doing your local testing, as well as testing on the cloud, and adding continuous testing into your DevOps pipeline. And then finally, low-code design and development experiences, and reimagining the aspects of application workflows, reimagining how you can generate application, dynamic thread-based forms, and all the server-side workflows, as well as the rule-based engines as well, including all those capabilities within our local design and development experience. And all of that powered by the use of Kony IQ, which is the AI and machine learning framework that enables smarter and assistant development within Kony Quantum. So with that, it's a wrap. Thank you for joining us today. And I don't know, 10 minutes back to you. If you have any open questions, I've been trying to answer some of these questions, but if you have any open questions, we can probably take 1 or 2 questions, or we can, probably answer them later within Basecamp itself.
Thank you, Faizan. Thank you, Suhas, for your session, for your time today. It was great and a lot of info. I'm sure the audience today is taking a lot of information back, and so we are still here for a couple more minutes. If you have questions, use the Q&A panel. Faizan and Suhas will answer as and when possible. We are still here for a few minutes. Also, this will be recorded and it will be available on Basecamp, so make sure you can visit and share it with your friends in case they are not able to attend today. Thank you once again to all the attendees for joining us today. Keep a tab on the events page on Basecamp to see what are the upcoming events and what are the new topics that we are going to do and more webinars. Thanks all once again, and I'm putting myself on mute, but we are still available. Use the Q&A panel and you can still ask questions. Thank you.